Now, you guys ain't been in the building for 2 years now with this coach. All right, but I'll tell you right now. All right, if you're in the damn building, you walk on through our locker room, you ain't seeing that crap you saw before. All right? You ain't seeing guys right now planning vacations. You ain't seeing golf clubs in front of players' locker. You ain't seeing that stuff. Okay? You ain't seeing that. All right? And that's not because of some high school program where we're cracking whip. It's because our guys understand how to play together as a team and they understand the process of how they're going through. So I can go into a whole X's and O's evaluation. I can go through a roster evaluation. I can go through a lot of things for you right now, okay? I do it every day myself. I go through all that stuff. But in terms of the next step to take, I can tell you right now, okay, I know we're a whole lot closer to where we're going than we are further away. I can tell you that right now. I can tell you we got more players here who are going to be free agents next year, all right, who are in my office every day begging to come back. I know that. Okay, I know that. Or players that we coached last year that still call me twice a week talking about, how much they wish they were still here even though they're getting paid more somewhere else. Okay? So I know we've got the right foundational pieces in. I know we have some players, some key positions, all right, that are guys you can build with, keep carrying on. All right? I know we got the right temperament. I know we got the right culture in terms of teaching the players. Okay? Which is why I don't come up here and try to assassinate some player because I think it's going to save my.
Well, here we are again. Gotta love little Joe Judge.
Joe Judge.
Bears frustrating the hell out of the Giants. Their biggest win of the year in terms of just complete dominance. Joe Judge making everybody laugh in that press conference. Joe Judge, you don't have any players who are coming back who want to come and play for your fun team. Bears dominate 29-3, the final score on Sunday at Soldier Field. Game wasn't even close. First snap of the game was a fumble. Bears scored on the next play. Game was over in the first 8 seconds of that game. Mike Glennon, 24 total yards. Nice to see the Bears dominate a franchise that has, quite frankly, more questions than the Bears do to answer this offseason. I know the Bears have a lot, and we're going to get into all that tonight. Club Dub Podcast presented by SportsMockery.com. But it is nice to know that there are franchises that are much, much worse off than the Bears are at this moment in time. What's up, guys? How we doing?
Great.
Good, man.
Doing good. Doing
How was
well.
the weekend? How was the weekend? You guys, I'm assuming we all watched the game and everything, right?
Of course. I mean, the closer the NFL season gets to ending, the more valuable each game is. Like even the more painful ones. Like I went back on Gamecast and Game Pass and I watched some like random game. I can't even remember what it was. But it's like every game means so much more just from like, oh my God, the season's almost over. So heck yeah.
Yeah, this game wasn't close from the jump. I mean, Mike Glennon really stinks, guys. This guy blows, right? How is he still in the league? Seriously, I get that they had guys off the street playing wide receiver and Tomei was out, but he still had a couple guys. He still has Saquon and he still had what's his face to throw to
Kenny
as well.
Galladay.
Yeah, he still had Galladay. Galladay didn't catch the ball once in that game, right?
They didn't have a target, I don't believe.
That's embarrassing.
Brutal. Look, clearly the Bears made a mistake giving him $18 million guaranteed, but a team after that gave him $5 million. And I think it was the Cardinals, if I remember correctly. But there was a team that actually went out there after what he put on tape in Chicago and decided, you know what, Mike Glennon deserves another contract. Amazing. Now, look, yeah, I mean he sucks.
Yeah,
minus 10 total passing yards.
It was the Cardinals.
Yeah,
he threw one touchdown that year and had a 112 passer rating in the one game that he appeared in. Yep. Mike Glennon.
Oh, big game Glennon.
Yeah.
my minus 10 passing yards. Like the Bears had a game this season in Cleveland with one net passing yard, and they somehow made another team have a worse performance. Like that, how it's amazing to me that an NFL team is capable of that kind of performance.
The NFL never disappoints when it comes to surprising you.
It's incredible.
I'm looking at the teams that signed Mike Glennon, and we opened the show with if you're just tuning in, we opened it with a Joe Judge press conference. A very frustrated Joe Judge after the Bears completely pantsed them at Soldier Field on Sunday, 29-3. The Giants have nothing. I mean, there was not one promising thing on their team that I saw on Sunday. Their offensive line might be the worst in the league. the Bears I get that their pass rush is dominant, and maybe I'm not giving them enough credit, but Mike Glennon didn't stand a chance. They wouldn't let him throw a pass. He was rushed on almost every play. This was the longest play from completion in the first pass. This play that should have been a loss.
Late November could be the final play of the quarter. Here they come again, Glennon. Football came away. It was actually a quarter. Giants short, didn't pick up the first down, but Glennon somehow able to get rid of the football, but they're still down 2 touchdowns.
I mean, he got absolutely wrecked on that play, and it looked
In
like
like a second.
They picked up about 7 yards. That was their largest play from scrimmage in the first half. I mean, we want to talk about teams that are just poorly managed, and the Giants are clearly worse off than the Bears are at this moment in time. But teams that gave Mike Glennon a contract after the Bears, the Raiders, the Jaguars, and then the Giants. Well, the Cardinals, I'll give them the benefit of the doubt. They got their quarterback thing figured out. But I don't think the Raiders are run well, clearly. I mean, look what's going on over there. I mean, they have a chance to make the playoffs on Sunday. I don't think they will. I don't think the Colts will lose to the Dolphins.
Jaguars.
But yeah, then you got the they're playing the Jaguars.
It's a play-in game, actually. So if the Raiders win, they're in. It's
really?
Yeah. It's a play-in game. I think
Pittsburgh needs Jacksonville to win.
Pittsburgh and I think even
that's
Baltimore.
Right.
I think even Baltimore needs Jacksonville to win. But yeah, I mean, quite honestly,
that's my point. The Jaguars and the Giants are clearly worse run than the Bears are.
Awful. Yeah, 100%. And look, credit the Bears. I mean, look, they could have. I mean, yes, he very well is. And look, credit the Bears. They came out and they took care of business. I mean, we want to talk about the Bears are 5-10, and I guess now 6-10, not having a good year. Changes on the way, but they came out. They played hard. They dominated a team that just clearly wanted to go home, and they took care of business. And look, good for them. There is still value in winning games this late in the season when you're playing out the string, because guys like Darnell Mooney and Cole Kmet and Travis Gibson, these guys are making plays in wins and learning how to win, for what it's worth. I mean, to an extent, but they're getting that experience here as we close out the year, and it'll be valuable next year.
And also there's the fact that you can start building maybe some momentum going into the next year. If you can string together some wins, you build a little positivity and you can start feeling better about yourself. Like, okay, we showed that we can win some football games. We just got to get healthy, maybe make a few adjustments to the roster, and, we can be right back in it going into next year. So there is always value in winning football games. And credit to Sean Desai, man, what he's been able to do with that defense, considering what they've been through, losing Kyle Fuller, losing Khalil Mack, Akeem Hicks missing multiple games, and they're still the 5th-ranked defense going into the final week of the season. That's just some outstanding work.
Having no cornerback outside
of Jalen Johnson, yeah.
Right? I mean, it honestly, he had a stretch in the middle of the season where I was a little bit iffy, especially with those late game meltdowns against Pittsburgh and Baltimore, San Francisco. But man, I mean, he has done a great job ever since, and credit to him. I mean, if he exits this offseason and gets scooped up by another team, it will be a loss for the Bears.
Yeah, that will be interesting. Just based on how poorly they've played this year in some big games, and how he's had a very nice year overall. Sean Desai's done a very nice job. There's been a couple games in there where it's been like, oh boy, like what's going on here? Like I can, pointing out a couple. That Packers game for one was tough, but I don't know. I have a hard time believing that some teams are going to look at the Bears and try and poach any of these coaching staff. But I do hope that the next regime does keep Sean Desai. I know a lot of people are clamoring for Vic Fangio to come back from, obviously we'd all love to have Vic back. I think in any form, I think he would want to come back too. He had his most success here with this defense, and he's close with a lot of those guys still there. But you got to remember, a couple of those guys are leaving. At the end of the year, we might Akeem Hicks likely not coming back. But I think everybody else from that 2018 team, like there's not many of them left. But Roquan, Mack, they'll be back. Eddie Jackson will be back. So maybe those relationships get Vic back. And would you foresee that working out? Or are you just rolling with Desai here? I mean, what are we doing? Which one's going to bring the most out of that defense next year?
I think, Vic's got the longest track record of anybody, and one reason I pointed out you would probably want to go with Vic, even though he's older, is that he's not going to get another head coaching opportunity after what happened in Denver, not at this stage of his career. So if you hire him, he's pretty much solid as your defensive coordinator moving forward, and you don't have to worry about him getting poached no matter how well he does. That's one reason I would go with Fangio if he would be willing to come back, obviously. Whereas if Desai stays and he continues to do well, somebody's going to eventually pick him up as a head coach. So you always have to weigh things like that. And honestly, the market for defensive coordinators can be pretty good this coming offseason, because not only Fangio, but Mike Zimmer might also be available. And if you can get him as a defensive coordinator, you're also in pretty damn good shape. So, the Bears would be sitting pretty if they do end up going with the offensive head coach again, this time around, and they can get themselves a great defensive coordinator.
It's a good point, Eric. And I think the risk of losing a coordinator is pretty big, and it's pretty devastating, especially if you have a really good one. I mean, we saw what happened to the Bears defense after Chuck Pagano had to take over for Vic Fangio. I mean, there was clearly a drop-off. So having that coordinator who will not get poached, like Sean Desai, certainly a risk of being poached for a head coaching job. Eventually, it may not be next year, it may not be the year after, but he's going to get his chance. I mean, this guy is a young, bright, well-regarded defensive mind. And look at what Brandon Staley is doing in Los Angeles. I think he proved that, look, defensive coordinators still have value and can be good head coaches. I'm a little bit disturbed by what their defense has done lately, but it still, I mean, Desai, to your point, is a risk. Fangio would be less of a risk to leave, so that's got to be taken into consideration. So if Desai is cleared out as part of the coaching staff, being relinquished at the end of the year, and Vic is fired or Mike Zimmer is fired in Minnesota, I mean, I think the next head coach has to consider all of that, because losing a coordinator, especially one that has such an impact schematically on the defense or whatever side of the ball, it's a tough loss, and you don't want that.
Running the numbers here, Vic Fangio's defense this year, third in the league in points given up at 18.4. They're tied with the Bills and Patriots, two really stout defenses, two very well coached defenses, and they're also ninth overall now in yards per game and yards given up. So the Bears are top five, actually. The Bears give up 315 yards a game, so they're only behind San Francisco, the Patriots, Bills, and Panthers. Surprisingly, Panthers top three in there. Yeah, I wouldn't have put that. They had a couple. I mean, I know they've had a couple key injuries, so look out. That Panthers defense might be pretty good next year when they get J.C. Horn back. But I don't know. For me, I really like the way Desai is running things, and if he's going to be a little bit, I think it'll come down to money. Honestly, depending on who the head coach wants to. Maybe a younger head coach would want an older Vic Fangio in there, and maybe an older head coach is like, no, we don't. We're going to roll with the younger Sean Desai. I want a guy who is younger, is going to listen to me. So I think it's really going to depend on who the head coach is next year, which, is a huge question mark at this point in time. Let's give Robert Quinn his flowers, though. 18 sacks. Should have had 19 in this game. Mike Glennon with, really smart decision. That play we showed you earlier, that little flip pass out to the side to Barkley. Robert Quinn is having an unbelievable season and playing the Vikings next week, a pretty beat-up Vikings team. Maybe we see him get to 20. I don't know. We saw T.J. Watt last night hit 19 and a half. He now leads the
20.
league.
Especially if Kirk Cousins doesn't play. And you go against Sean Mannion, you could tee off on him.
That's what I'm saying. It sounds like from the Vikings guys that have talked on the radio this week that Sean Mannion is going to start on Sunday. So,
oh boy.
We'll see. We'll see. Yeah, I mean, yikes for the Vikings, I guess. But they want to lose. I mean, they want Zimmer out. It's literally the Vikings and Bears are in similar spots. Both head coaches are likely to get fired.
I'm more curious about their GM, Rick Spielman, because if he's out, I think the Bears should hire him immediately, because he's one of the best GMs in the NFL, and you can't convince me otherwise. He works the draft to perfection. He signs good free agents. He's consistently built a competitive roster for years. The only thing he hasn't been able to figure out, for the most part, was the quarterback position. Kirk Cousins has been solid, but he hasn't gotten them over the hump. So he would inherit Justin Fields, and he'd be able to put a really talented group of offensive players around him. So if the Bears could get him, I think they'd be in business. Excellent.
Yeah, point. I mean, Rick Spielman is, just incredible. What he has done in Minnesota, it's honestly a shame that they have to consider cutting ties with all these folks, because that roster is ready to win.
Mhm.
It is that good. So yeah, I mean, if he becomes free, that would be awesome.
Well, that brings up the question, though.
Mhm.
We heard a lot this week: is Ryan Pace staying in the organization? And honestly, if you're Ryan Pace, this is here's the only scenario for him. If I'm putting myself in his shoes, it's I've accepted that I'm good at identifying talent in certain spots, but not all of them. I've done what I can to build this part of the organization. He's built a pretty good defense. I'll give him that. He's drafted a lot of all-world talent on the defensive side of the ball. I still want to make a lot of money. I like this team. I'm just not comfortable running the draft ops and then player. And I want to go to director of something else in the organization. They can make up a title for him. It's got to be his own ego aside. Otherwise, how are you going to hire someone in his position and keep him around? And do you want his opinion on things anymore? I mean, maybe on the defensive side, but maybe offensively, you have to say, listen, man, we're good. Like, there's got to be some dividing lines, and we'll never hear that from George. And it's really going to be interesting what we hear next Monday morning following that Vikings game is where Pace is, if he's staying. We know Nagy's not going to stay, but where's the role for Pace in this? Where's he going to stay? And do you want him to stay? I guess yes or no. Do you guys want him to stay?
I personally do not. I think they need a fresh start, a complete clean slate, in my opinion. But I do understand McCaskey being reluctant to move on from Pace because he has, from a roster point of view, had a little more success in the past couple of years. If you look at the younger guys on the roster, Roquan Smith, Jalen Johnson, Bilal Nichols has come along lately again.
He's had a couple nice weeks.
Darnell Mooney's on the cusp of 1,000 yards. David Montgomery's a stud. So he's put some young pieces onto this roster that are starting to thrive. And then you throw in Robert Quinn, his prize free agent from 2020, didn't do so well his first year, but now he sets the single season franchise sack record. So that's the timing of that is working in Pace's favor as well. And throw in the fact that the McCaskies just happen to like the guy on top of it. You understand why they might be reluctant to move on from him. But the problem is the majority of people wanted him gone at the end of last season. And now that they're about to be either 6-11 or 7-10, they want him gone even more because he only has one winning season in his entire tenure to this point with the Bears. So it makes sense that they would try to search for some sort of middle ground to where everybody can be happy, move him out of the GM spot and maybe, promote him to another position, be it president of football ops or whatever the hell you want to call it. But ultimately the idea would be to get another guy in there who pretty much takes over the personnel decisions, with Pace sort of being a sounding board for that person, whoever it ends up being. So I'm not in favor of that because it can just muddy the waters more often than not, but I would understand why they did it if that's the direction they ended up going.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think Pace's situation has certainly been muddier than Nagy's here. If they wanted to keep him in that president of football operations role, they're planning or maybe planning to promote somebody in that role anyway. The question is someone like Pace well suited to take that role? Because you're probably going to have to make tough decisions often. And, I think someone was reporting it that Pace is someone who avoids conflict. He's not necessarily very adversarial, doesn't like having those tough conversations, becomes everyone's buddy. So, it's one of those things where will he be able to identify the right person to then take control of the roster and make tough decisions, advise, in the negative, those kinds of things. So while I completely understand the McCaskey's fondness of Pace, I think he's done a lot of good things for the Bears to modernize their football operation, Hallis Hall, their nutritional program, and just various things that they've done to at least make them a more modern football team. I think he may have run his course, and I think he may have just taken them as far as he can, and it's probably time for a fresh voice. The good news is whoever's coming in to, I think, Eric, you were mentioning this, they don't have to work on a clean slate
right,
like Pace had to when he came in 2015. There is enough of a base here where you can make certain decisions and think, hey, you know what, maybe we can compete right away. Or you know what, no, I don't like this roster. I don't like this salary cap. I'm blowing this whole thing up. I don't know how Bears fans would take that, but you have to kind of trust if they're going in a new direction and that's the right way to, if that's what they think is the right direction, then kind of have to roll with it. So it'll be very interesting. by all accounts, he's been getting counseling from a lot of interesting, powerful, well-respected people outside the organization to evaluate that. And it seems, based on reports, is that his advice, or the recommendation he's been given, George, is to fire Pace. So we'll see what happens.
I mean, yeah, it makes the most sense. There's no way you can get away with giving him the president of football operations position and hiring another. That doesn't make an ounce of sense. If you give him another job, it has to be something less than what he's doing now. I mean, straightforward. If you want to make him director of, I don't know, make up a position, give him director of defensive scouting. He's done a nice job building a defense. He's done very well in that role. But he should not have any say on the offensive side of the football. None.
The bottom line is with Pace is, from what I understand, it's going to go one of two ways. Either he's going to stay the GM or he's going to get fired. That's pretty much either direction it's going to go. And it really feels like it's 50-50 right now, that McCaskey hasn't reached a final decision either way. He's reluctant to move on from Pace because he happens to like him, not just as a person, but as an executive. He thinks he's actually done a pretty solid job with the team. But at the same time, the team isn't winning enough.
Yeah, they haven't won a playoff game underneath them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And he hired Nagy. He drafted Trubisky, to big-time blunders that have really set them back. And they're still trailing the Packers by a wide margin. He hasn't been able to close the gap. And when you factor all of that in, there's more negatives than positives with the guy. And, you know, I understand you believe in him. I understand you like him, but he hasn't gotten the job done. And that's what matters at the end of the day.
Yeah. And some big gaps in there. The Packer one being probably the biggest gap.
Oh, it matters. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that alone, that carries a lot of weight. I don't know. I'd like to see him out. I just don't think he's done a good enough job. That's me. I think he's, I think he's a fine guy, whatever, but he hasn't done his job. That's what happens when you don't do your job. You lose it. It's a tough role. I think he'll get another job elsewhere, but not as a general manager in the National Football League. So,
I mean, you think about what's happening in Green Bay, 3 straight 13-3 seasons to open Matt LaFleur's career. I mean, just wow. And then you look at what the Bears have done.
Yeah,
They've
it sucks
struggled.
to watch that.
It's, I mean, for Bears fans, it certainly sucks to watch, but you always, I mean, as an NFL fan, you have to, it's marvelous, honestly. And I say that like literally by definition, like marveling at what they've done together. The game planning, I mean, we've talked about this before, and I've certainly made my marveling of them, very, very public here. It is incredible. And so the Bears need to be looking at that. And is Ryan Pace in position to hire someone or evaluate someone and build a roster the way the Packers have? And the answer is no. You look at the Packers offensive side of the ball. How many players on the Bears offense start for the Packers? Maybe David Montgomery. Maybe
Mooney.
I don't know about that.
Mooney would, just because I
think Mooney would outpace MVS, but outside of that, really not.
You don't really have it. Exactly.
Look at the Packers' offensive line. They have 3 guys out, 2 of them Pro Bowlers, an All-Pro, and one their starting center who was pretty damn good too.
Like all season too.
And they are still running the ball like crazy. I mean, that's how you build a good offense. I mean, Brian Pace has no idea how to do that. And we saw that last year. There was no offensive line.
His entire philosophy has been kind of one-sided. He does focus on the defensive line more often than not. He'll spend money there. He'll spend some high draft picks there. But on the offensive line, he's kind of played the cheap route, in a lot of ways. He's got a couple of second-round picks on there, but he's also got some. He held on to Charles Leno. He's making do with an undrafted free agent center. And he finally invested with Tevin Jenkins, but it seems like every time he goes with, one of these high-end tackles, something goes wrong for whatever reason. So, his efforts on the offensive line haven't been good enough, and it's showed way too often, which is a big reason why this offense continues to lack success.
Certainly, yeah. And so, I mean, and just to finish that last segment off before we get to Fields against the Vikings, when you pit this roster against what the Packers have, the Bears roster against what the Packers have, like even on defense, right? Even on defense, I think there's a lot of positions where the Packers probably have better players than the Bears. Their secondary, for the most part, I would take almost entirely over the Bears secondary.
I would take both of their safeties. I would take Savage and Amos over Jackson and
Tayshaun Gibson.
Yeah, Gibson and Deion.
I love Jalen Johnson, but Jair Alexander is a better cornerback. And then
see that I don't know. I know Jair had a really good year, but I don't know if there's that much of a difference between that. Jalen's really good. But
he's good, but that's kind of the point though, is right? Is like there isn't much of a difference, even for a player that the Bears may have a better player. You know what I mean? Like,
Roquan would start.
Roquan would start.
I'd take the Bears front seven and the Packers secondary. That's pretty much where I'd be at.
Right.
See, I don't even know if I would say that. Just because look at
Kenny
the
Clark
Packers. The Packers,
with the exception of Kenny Clark, because he's a friggin' stud.
I mean, he's great.
All the more reason to invest at center because he's been dominating you in that area for so long.
Mustafa,
killing them.
Man, Mustafa and Whitehair gotta. They need an answer there, no question about it. But they need wide receivers first. That's where I've been adamant about this. The Bears need to focus their draft around the wide receiver position. No more of this. No more of this. We're going to draft for, these other. No, you need players that are going to run down the field, and you need guys that are going to get you 1,000-yard seasons and fast. Look at what I know you're not going to find a Jamar Chase in this draft, but God's sakes, look at those touchdowns he had on Sunday and tell me that they were great throws by Burrow, but those were all Jamar Chase. The Bears have never had somebody like that can make their own touchdown out of nothing. They've never had that. They need that bad. Will Justin Fields start on Sunday against the Vikings? I hope he does. Love to get one last look at him this season. I know a lot of people are like, oh, just save him. He's injured. No, get him out there. I think he's good enough to play. Let's see what he can do against, the Vikings divisional game. People are like, oh, it doesn't mean anything. You're right. It may not mean anything, but let's see him play. I think he deserves to play, and we'll see what he does.
And there's two reasons for that, right? There's one, obviously the Bears need to see what they have, and I'm not saying that they have to make any sort of evaluation on Fields, but you want him to go into the offseason with a little bit of a good performance. I mean, I don't think the Bears have seen enough, at least where they feel like, hell yeah, we have the guy. It has not been a Justin Herbert type of season, and I'm not saying he needs to have that, but like, you can't help but feel a little bit dissatisfied with how Fields' rookie season has gone, and going into the offseason with that injury, I think against who was it against after he stopped playing? Was it against the Packers?
Against the Vikings.
Against the Vikings, you're right, sir. Yeah, against the Vikings. After that performance that he put up in the first, it just you want something better than that. And the second thing is, even for Fields, and I think I forget who in the media has brought this up before, but this is a guy who is not used to losing. And the only start that the Bears have won this year of his, so they've won two starts of his this year. It's against the Lions, which who cares, and then against the Raiders, which was back in October. Since then, he has just experienced loss after loss after loss, and some of them in heartbreaking fashion. San Francisco, and then the Pittsburgh, and then obviously the one against the Packers. But some of them have just been bad, and so you want this guy to experience ideally a win and play well, so that he feels like, hey, you know what? Yeah, I can do it in this league. Because right now, you're just kind of like, it's just very dissatisfying what he's been doing on the field this year. A lot more bad than good. He has shown improvement, but the results, look, at the end of the day, I'm sure he would like to see results, and I know Bears fans would too.
It goes back to that thing about confidence building, momentum building. There's value in winning, but there's also value in playing well from the individual level. And, he actually had a decent game against the Vikings, but unfortunately the turnovers marred that. So it kind of masked how well he threw as a passer and all that sort of stuff. So I think he'd really like to go in and try to have a clean game. A win obviously would be nice, but a clean game where he throws a couple of touchdowns and looks really solid going into and obviously to stay healthy more than anything else, but to start and finish a football game on the road against a still pretty decent team. And, just trying to get something positive moving into the offseason where he can heal up, and hopefully the next coaching staff can get him prepped for a big second-year jump.
Comments rolling in here on the Club Dub podcast. Love it, guys. We've got a couple new guys tuning in. I know we got Bryce and Claudius have been with us for the last few weeks. Appreciate that, guys. We've got Delcor tuning in, Lil Yumper tuning in, and for the follow. Appreciate that. Guys, go give us a follow on Twitter right now if you're tuning in at ClubDub_podcast. We are presented by SportsMockery.com and the Pinwheels and Ivy podcast. They'll have a show tomorrow for you talking Cubs and White Sox offseason. Listen, I want to see Justin start because this season is just I'm going to be selfish fan for a minute here. This season has sucked. It's been one of the most painful that I've had to endure, and I know a lot of people feel the same way. There's games that should have been won. They've been screwed by the officials. They didn't catch a break until a missed field goal last week against the Seahawks, or 2 weeks ago against the Seahawks. Everything was breaking away from them. I'd like to see them go out on a high note. This Vikings secondary stinks. Open up the playbook like Claudius just said. Throw the damn ball. Go nuts. The Vikings have a great pass rush. That's about it. If Sean Mannion's playing, they should have an absolute field day, just like they did against Mike Glennon. It should be the exact same. And you know that they're going to run the exact same style. A lot of blitzing, or more blitzing, honestly, than I've seen from the Bears all season against the Giants. Open it up. Let Fields throw the ball. I think he'll play. It sounds like he's going to play. That seems to be everybody seems to be saying that he's going to play on Sunday, which, go out on a high note. And then for God's sakes, get him to the offseason healthy and give him what he needs. And he needs wide receivers, damn it. Go and get him an offense, please. He's got a great running back room, and the offensive line's coming along. Go get him some targets. Now, is winning 3 in a row a bad thing? Because this would be so Bears to win 3 in a row and be like, you know what? Look at how they said it last year in the post-game press conference. We lost 6 in a row, but look at how we rebounded and made the playoffs and kept everybody.
Different situation because when they won the 3
game.
last time, they made the playoffs, whereas this time the playoffs were long out of the picture by the time they started winning again. And plus, these are 3 bum teams at this point, so just like it was last year too. But that time, he managed to at the right time to get back into the playoffs with a little help from the Cardinals. But it's not the case this time. They still have a losing record, whether or not they win on Sunday or not. So he was able to hide behind a 500 record and making the playoffs. That was just enough for him to keep his job for one more year. This time it's a losing record, and then the 3-game win streak means absolutely nothing at this point. So I don't think the impact is going to be nearly as strong this time around.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think the only thing this winning streak would do really is, give Matt Nagy just some, positive juju, so to speak, heading into the offseason and, finding his next role. I mean, hopefully he's able to land a role with another team, at least from an assistant standpoint, and kind of get his feet back under him. From by all accounts, everything that he's handled outside of just some of the coaching aspects of it has been with class. And so you want to see a guy like that get another opportunity and continue his career successfully. So hopefully this helps him do that. But really, this is more for the players. Look, they've worked hard. It's been a hard year. They deserve some success heading into the offseason, and winning 3 in a row is, like I said before, earlier in the show, it's good for some of the young guys who are going to be here next year, like Montgomery, who contributed to the last couple of wins with scoring some touchdowns, and Cole Kmet with some key grabs, and Darnell Mooney is obviously ascending as a valuable weapon for this team for the 2nd year in a row. Some of the offensive line guys who have been playing well. It's going to be good for them to see their effort translate into wins, but that's really all it means, right? I mean, at the end of the day, they are going to have a new head coach next year. They're going to be learning new system. They're going to be learning new techniques from new coaches that are in here. So a lot of what they've been doing this year is going to change. This is really for them to validate, hey, everything that we've done all year is finally, resulting in something nice. It'll be one more club dub, hopefully, in Minnesota for them, and they can ride off into the.
The difference is here too is we heard Joe Judge beginning the show saying, my players are still fighting for me. They still want to play. No, they're not, dude. Did you see that game on Sunday? They're not fighting for you. They're done. They want you out of town. They're not coming into your office telling you to come back. Stop lying to your fan base. The difference is players are fighting for Matt Nagy right now. They're playing hard for him. Matt Nagy is, by all accounts, a great leader of men, a great person. He seems to be a very class-first guy. Just can't coach NFL offense. I don't know what it is. Maybe he'll figure it out a second time around. I think this is a great point, and I think we all kind of get lost being Bears fans and wanting to see them do well offensively. Look at how many coaches have been fired to go on to be great. And, there's probably less – there obviously is less coaches that have gone on to be great that have been fired, but there are a handful that have gone on to be great. Andy Reid, Bill Belichick. I'm not saying they're going to be those types of guys. Look, Frank Reich, same thing. Guys who have lost their jobs and gone on to be great. And I think Matt Nagy will get another shot down the road. I think he'll go to college first, Eric. I think we're in agreement on that. I think he'll probably get a college gig, maybe.
It's the competitive part of him probably will want to stay in the NFL, but
well.
I think he would be absolutely perfect for college. He's a rah-rah type of guy. He's got a scout's eye, so I think he'd be a fantastic recruiter. You get him in a good program that has some allure, and I think he'd be a fantastic college coach.
Yeah, I mean, he's clearly a leader. Clearly. I mean, his guys they've won 2 in a row, and they've played really well, and there seems to be no guys really giving up out there. I know people are pointing the finger at Allen Robinson on Twitter saying he's been checked out and he's not playing well and things like that, but guy lost 10 pounds from COVID. He doesn't have his game legs underneath him. I don't think I refuse to question Allen Robinson's effort. I know it hasn't been there, but it seems like everybody else except for him has been playing up to speed and full strength, and it looks good. And that looks good for Nagy, and I'm happy for him for that. He's a good dude. He donated to the Jeff Dickerson Fund, which we're going to touch on here in a second. Let him go out on a high note. I don't think winning 3 in a row is a bad thing, just because you're right. The circumstances are different.
It's never a bad thing. Yeah, it's never a bad thing, and
it can be if you put everything down, but not this year.
I mean, yeah, but it's like last year they made the playoffs. Like, yeah, I know obviously it wasn't good for this year, but they made the playoffs. Like, it's just one of those things where I understand why they did what they did last year. This year it would just be I think the writing has been on the wall since the Ravens game, really. If it wasn't there after the Browns game. So this is just going to be one of those things that's feel good, and then we move on. But to your point about Nagy being a good college head coach, I completely agree. Look, the guy has been able to, for 4 years, despite the many losing streaks, keep his players, NFL grown men players, playing hard for him. I mean, imagine what he could do with college kids. So that would be, a lot of fun to see. Unfortunately, right now, he's a coach who learned a scheme in Kansas City, and not necessarily how to be an offensive, coordinator per se from a game planning and adapting standpoint. But hopefully he takes this lesson and he figures out somewhere else how to do that. And maybe he gets another shot in a decade or so and becomes a really good coach. But for now, yeah, it's just I think he landed in Chicago at the wrong time.
Over under how many weeks we get until we hear Pat Fitzgerald and the Bears rumors again?
We're already hearing it.
Oh, you guys already have? I haven't heard one yet. It's not going to happen.
It's not nearly as potent as it was last year, probably because Northwestern isn't doing as well as they did last year. But, they're probably there, but I don't think he's going to end up being one of their top candidates.
He just signed, a 10-year extension there to a mega contract.
That, yeah.
So.
Lifetime contract, basically.
Yeah, I mean, he's good enough to have that job. We'll see. But just on the coaching search, you guys heard anything?
It's still sort of where I think it is. I think they're looking for somebody with previous experience. Obviously everyone's talking about Jim Harbaugh for obvious reasons.
I got a feeling it's going to be Harbaugh, man.
Maybe, Leslie Frazier, we know about him. He's been mentioned a couple of times. Josh McDaniels is a prior head coach. So there's options out there. It's actually, a pretty deep pool of former head coaches who might, be deserving of a second shot in the NFL. So you would understand why the Bears would want to go that route. It comes down to the question of would those second-time head coaches be willing to work with a GM who might already be in place like Pace, which sort of muddies the waters, like I mentioned before. But, from what I understand, the Bears are keeping all of their options open. It's not a foregone conclusion that it's going to be somebody with experience. They're going to cast the net wide, minority candidates, offensive, defensive guys. They're going to, look into everybody and try to make the best decision possible. They want the best leader. They don't care which side of the ball he comes from. So they seem to have a good idea of what they want in their next head coach. It's just a question of obviously finding him.
I just have a feeling it's going to be Harbaugh. And let me quickly explain why. It's going to be, they're going to hire a new front office. They're going to hire a president of football operations. They're going to change things around. They're going to go in a liberal direction from where they've been. But then they're going to want to keep some things the same, and they're going to go back to what's comfortable. A guy who knows the organization, guy who is, rough and tumble Jim Harbaugh. He's got a history with the Bears, and he's a rough head coach. He's not afraid to get in the ref's ear, a little blue cop. They're going to change a lot, and they're going to have something that's comfortable, and that's why I have a feeling Jim Harbaugh's got to be their guy right now. I just have a feeling it's him.
I hope you're wrong, man.
Why do you think? Why do you hope I'm wrong? Do you
I just
really think he's going to suck? I think he'd be fine, honestly.
I think he'll build a program, but I think first of all he has a ceiling in the NFL. To an extent, he rubbed people the wrong way, so I think he has a shelf life as well.
That he does, yeah.
And that's that's not what you need for a quarterback who you're hoping, if he's good, is your quarterback for the next 15 years. So, I'm look, and I've said this before. The highest ceiling possibility in the NFL is usually an offensive coordinator who can call plays as your head coach. Mm-hmm. If that's the case and you have a quarterback, you have that pairing forever. No one can touch you, right? So that is obviously the highest ceiling. I would love for the Bears to explore all of those opportunities first. Someone like Josh McDaniels would be awesome. Someone like Nathaniel Hackett would be fun. Sean Payton, obviously, it would be the dream. But look, those would be folks that I focus on first. There are obviously instances where defensive or special teams coordinators or coaches could be good choices as well. But you want to go for the highest ceiling, at least explore all the highest ceiling areas first. And Jim Harbaugh's not that guy, so that's where I'm kind of like, I'm hoping they do a little bit more research than that, than just kind of fall in love with this whole like, oh, we need to build this program. We need to go with the surest fire thing. And let's go with Jim Harbaugh. I hope it's not that, because it's thinking small.
And also we have to factor something in here. The interview process is going to be so important, because people continue to not take that into account, that jobs are won and lost in these interviews, because people were so convinced that Bruce Arians was the obvious choice for the job back in 2013, but Mark Trestman knocked his interview out of the park. It sort of pulled them even. And then Arians came off, I guess, a little more brusque than the team wanted. So they went with Trestman, who seemed a little more agreeable, and we all know how that worked out. And then it was the same with Matt Nagy. He did so well in his own interview that the Bears literally hired him 24 hours later. That was how much he knocked it out of the park. So it comes down to who can make the best impression on George McCaskey, because in the end, it's going to end up being his decision, as much as the GM's going to be part of the interview process, obviously. But McCaskey's the guy he's the owner. He's going to make that decision. So if you make a positive impression on McCaskey, the job's probably going to end up being yours. So it comes down to which guy ends up having the best interview.
Well, I hope Sean Payton leaves the Saints. That would be, I think that's the dream for all of us.
Can you like, so he is about to go into, I think if the Saints win and if they beat the Falcons, and I think there's one result that has to go their way, that very likely will go their way, and I think it's San Francisco losing to the Rams, the Saints will make the playoffs having not had a starting quarterback since week 2.
Crazy. Just
Trevor
an unbelievable
Siemian,
coaching job.
Taysom Hill, fucking, what's his name? Ian Book.
Simeon.
Yeah, just
like, I forgot about Simeon,
and granted, a lot of it will be based on their defense. Their defense has been awesome. Their offense has not been that great this year. So, you don't want to give...
Yeah, they haven't had Michael Thomas all year. Right.
Michael Thomas. I know Alvin Kamara missed some time, and like obviously the quarterback. So, and then even Peyton has struggled a little bit as a play caller to an extent this year, but he's still the head coach. Like he is still responsible for this team. And I think Dennis Allen took over for head coach when Peyton was out with COVID, and they beat the Bucks, which I think it was on the road too. So,
shut him out.
Shut him out. Yeah, it's just
that was awesome.
Coaching staff has done a great job. Sean Payton's had that team ready to play all the time. It is remarkable what they've done. So if he is available, if he's tired of New Orleans and he wants to come home, the Bears should be having a blank check and be like, hey, fill it in.
So we still sticking with our last week's show. You guys both said McDaniels. We still with McDaniels this week? McDaniels, your choice?
Same.
He just put up a 50 burger with a rookie quarterback. He's put up 2 this year, 50-point games, and another 45 with a rookie quarterback. So the guy is an offensive wizard. You expect that after a decade that he's learned a lot of lessons from what happened in Denver. And, we don't really have all the details of what really happened in Indianapolis. It was an ugly situation, obviously, and it didn't look great. But, from all the things you hear, it's that he did have some valid reasons for backing out at the last second. Maybe he should have backed out sooner to make it look less, egregious. But at the same time, he's going to get the offense right, especially with Justin. You think he's going to put Justin in the best position to succeed. And when that happens, with the defense still being pretty strong, they can compete right away this coming next year.
Yeah, I mean, it would be so fun to cover an offense that you don't really know what they're going to do week to week, even though you can kind of predict it based on what you think the opponent's not doing well, right? I mean, crafting a game plan to run it 75 times or whatever because the other person doesn't have their nose tackle, heck yeah, sign me up for that. A game plan to throw it 100 times because their entire secondary is out with COVID, heck yeah, I'm signing up for that. So that unpredictability, that molding your identity each week and doing it well because you have the personnel to do it, that would be so much fun. So, I mean, and McDaniels is one of the few coaches in the league that has shown the propensity to do that year in and year out. And he's doing it this year without Tom Brady. Last year, he did it with Cam fucking Newton. So it's been fun.
All right. Josh McDaniels, that's the pick for head coach from these guys. For me, I don't know. What's that?
Did we sell you?
No, I don't know. I wouldn't be disappointed with it. You talk about rubbing people the wrong way. I think he does that too. So I don't know. This is the thing. I want them to go.
I don't care about liking the guy. I care if he wins.
Yeah, I just, you're right. I just enjoy having a head coach like Nagy being able to, explain. But you're right. I'd rather have him win if I had to choose. Obviously, I'd rather have him win. So I don't know. Ask your questions.
We've got a few coming in today.
This is a good one. What happened to Eddie Goldman? He's been quiet. And I saw somebody threw out on Twitter this week, cutting Eddie Goldman at the end of this year saves about $8.5 million against the cap.
Post June 1st, if they cut him before, it would be around $6.6 million.
Which I think you got to consider.
Yeah, because you're going into free agency, you need every dollar you can to help build around Justin. Get him some more weapons, maybe better protection, stuff like that.
And quite frankly, I mean, but if you lose a key, maybe this frees up money to bring Hicks back too. I'd hate to see him lose Hicks, but I think they're going to move on from him regardless.
Hicks, it depends entirely on what kind of money he's looking for. If he's looking for something at least close to what he's making right now, there's no way. There's no way they're going to bring him back because he's 32 years old. He's going to be 33 later this year.
Making what?
He's proven injury prone lately. You just don't pay that kind of money to a player at this stage of his career. Now, if he's willing to take a significant pay cut, then yeah, absolutely, you entertain it because when he's on the field, he can still be very effective.
Kind of rolls in well with this question over here. Can we get a 4-3 defensive coordinator? What do you think?
Given the state of their secondary, especially at cornerback, I think a switch to 4-3 would make some sense. But again, we all know that it's basically a nickel defense league at this point. So you can talk about 3-4 and 4-3, but at the end of the day, it all depends on your personnel, and you're going to need cornerbacks one way or the other. So if you look at the state of the personnel they have up front, I actually think a 4-3 defense would make sense because I think Bilal Nichols would fit that 3 technique position perfectly. I think that fits his skill set to a T. Then you have Mack, who's played 4-3 defensive end. You have Quinn, who is pretty much a 4-3 defensive end, who's just been playing outside linebacker this year. So I think it fits the personnel they have, but just get the best coach. Get the best coach you can. If it's a 3-4 guy, fine. If it's a 4-3 guy, great. Just get the best qualified guy for the job.
100% agree. I mean, yeah. I mean, I think base defense is probably in 30% of the time now in today's NFL. It's mostly nickel and dime. So, 100% agreed. And yeah, I think right now the realistically, I think the Bears defensive roster that will stay beyond this year, I think you can make the argument that they can fit either one, and you can mold a defense around it. So Roquan Smith can certainly play in the 4-3. Eddie Jackson can play in the 4-3. Jalen Johnson can play in the 4-3.
Ogletree's done a nice job too.
Ogletree's done a nice job, and
I believe he's played the 4-3 as well. So
exactly.
You got some pieces.
Certainly.
Did Trevathan play any 4-3 in Denver?
No, I think he's been strictly 3-4 most of his career.
And he's gone after this year anyway.
I was just looking at his contract details. They pushed a lot of money off in those dead years, so I think he's guaranteed to get cut.
He would probably be a post June 1st cut just to see if he can get some, salary cap. Because if you cut him before that, there's no way you're getting any salary cap space. So he'd be a post June 1st cut. That's my belief anyway.
Okay.
Yeah, tend to agree with you there. Who were we talking about? He won another marriage with Harbaugh. This was during the Pace conversation.
I think that was a Fangio conversation.
Oh,
I think he would because he worked with him at Stanford. Then he followed him to San Francisco. So they clearly respect and like each other. I don't think Fangio would have any problem working with Harbaugh again.
Agreed. Yeah.
Where'd they work? They worked at Stanford together?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
Just
Huh.
go.
Interesting. I'm
Wow.
kind of in for that. Yeah.
Page's been around a long time, man.
Dude,
He
just
has.
just another reason I think they're going to end on. I think Harbaugh will be their coach next year. Just another
Hey,
reason.
man, if he brings Fangio back, fantastic. But, Harbaugh's got a reputation for building really good staff. So if you're looking for a positive, that's a big one.
That is a big one.
And think of it this way: if he does sort of usher his own way out, like he tends to do, if he builds a good staff, you probably have a successor right there, ready to take over for him.
Yeah, and I just think of how many rumors and how many he didn't even interview for the job 4 years ago, but how many people were saying, "Oh, Harbaugh, Trubisky, a new hope." People wanted Jim Harbaugh then. I don't know. I think there's a lot of smoke around that fire. Again, we'll see if he leaves Michigan. Michigan, he might be, obviously he's, all these guys do this. They use it as leverage to make more money. Just took your
True.
team to the college football playoff. You got pants by Georgia. But if you want to make more money, use the NFL leverage to your advantage. So
Ben Albright did say that the Raiders and Bears are interested. It doesn't go just one way with Harbaugh wanting to return. So it is something to watch.
Certainly. Will George have the fortitude to do a complete flush? I think we talked about this already.
I don't think so.
The answer is I think
he's done it once before, so I don't think it's totally out of the realm of possibility. This is simply a question of him not wanting to move on from Pace because he likes Pace and he thinks Pace actually does a good job. This doesn't have anything to do with him not wanting to make changes because he understands changes need to be made. So this is just strictly his respect and admiration of Pace, the man and GM, rather than anything else.
Agreed. Is it good for him to experience what he's experiencing? This is going back to Justin Fields. Yeah. Look, any sort of experience is good. I mean, again, I know we've been talking at length over the course of the year about what was the right plan for his development. And once he got forced into action, it was best for him to keep on playing after he got in the first time. And that's what they've done. At least that's what they've tried to do. So it is, all experience is good. You just hope that he starts learning from some of those mistakes and builds on it, and hopefully he can finish off with a win. Hopefully he can finish off with a win.
Sorry, Andy. Your time with the Bears looks to be over and done with. Justin Fields likely to start on Sunday, hopefully. You're right, and I think it is a good thing because everybody has Justin Herbert rose glasses on. Like everyone watched him last year throw for 4,000 yards. People are like, this kid's a rookie. And now, mind you, keep in mind, much better offensive line, 2 wide receiver ones, arguably. Maybe not much better offensive line. At least part of it.
Last year, their offensive line wasn't good. This year, it's much better. But last year, it wasn't. It was their weapons that was really good. Hunter Henry, a tight end. You had Mike Williams, a first-round pick. You had Keenan Allen, who's a multi-time Pro Bowler. So he had way more to work with than Justin does right now. So it's always about context. Has he played well? Obviously not. He's made his share of mistakes. You wish he would be playing better, but at the same time, the whole situation around him, the coaching hasn't been good enough. The receivers haven't been good enough. The offensive line hasn't been good enough. This entire offense needs work, not just Justin.
Yeah, and Austin Eckler, too, plays just like he plays that Alvin Kamara role where he's just an absolute monster. So you're right. There's no way. And, okay, do we keep Sean Desai?
I wouldn't be opposed to it.
I think he stays. Yeah.
Hopefully.
It depends on the next head coach. If he wants his own guy, he wants his own guy. That's just the way it goes. But if he's open to keeping Desai, I'd be perfectly fine with it.
I did see that Desai was brought on during the Trestman era.
Yeah, he's a survivor. He finds a way to stick on this staff.
So I think he sticks around. I have a hard time believing that the head coach will come in.
Here's a fun hypothetical for you guys. Would you interview Desai for head coach?
No.
Ooh. So if you asked me this earlier in the season, I would have said yes. If you asked me in the middle of the season, I would have said no. And now I'm kind of curious again. Yeah.
It's tough, isn't it?
It's tough. I think he's worth an interview. Especially,
I want a guy with experience. I'm going to be
fair.
firm. I'm firm on it. That's me. But I'm going to stick to that.
Just watching him, I think he's going to be a head coach one day, and I think he's going to be a good one. The way he's been able to manage the whole situation on the defense has been really impressive to me. He's young. He's bright. He can make adjustments. He seems to motivate his guys really well. They've played their asses off every single week, despite what's been going on. So that's why I'd at least give him an interview, give him a chance to make his case for maybe taking over for Nagy. And, if the Bears went with him, I actually wouldn't be too upset about it. I'd understand the thought behind it because I do believe he's going to be a head coach one day.
I agree. And look, I mean, they kind of have gone down this road with Brandon Staley, and obviously jury's still out on Staley out in Los Angeles. But look, I mean, you have someone who has stuck around 3 different head coaching regimes, and for good reason. And we're seeing why this year. So, and to your point, I mean, the effort, the scheme, everything has been pretty well documented and executed, and clearly his players love him. So that's all important in a head coach, and you just hope that that combination with Justin Fields is able to bear fruit with whoever they bring on as an offensive coordinator. That'll be the important question. Hey, what's your plan with Justin Fields? And hopefully he has an answer for it. But it would be an interesting conversation for sure. A couple more here, guys. Will they try to get more draft picks, or at least try to get an early second rounder? You hope so?
I think they will. That you obviously have to. I think they only have 5 picks, so I think they're absolutely going to look into ways to possibly add more. Maybe trade a couple of guys who might be expendable. Eddie Goldman, if somebody's interested in him, or somebody else. Maybe even Robert Quinn, while his stock is as high as it's probably ever going to be. So
I really think they're going to look into trading Quinn.
And again, it depends on who the next GM is. I think they might also, because they're probably going to end up with a high second round pick, maybe move back a little bit, see if you can add a couple of mid to late rounders there. So they're going to definitely look in ways to add more draft capital however they can.
Yeah, maybe even entertain. I know Nick Foles is your backup next year. Maybe you still got to entertain a Nick Foles trade. I know he's a backup quarterback. You still have to entertain it. You got to do it. If you need a backup quarterback, hell, the Giants are going to be looking for a backup quarterback. Their quarterback room is dog shit. I mean, they not only need a starter, but they're going to need a back. There's a lot of teams like that are going to be backup quarterbacks. Look at COVID this year. It's not going to be gone next year. I got news for you guys. The importance of a backup quarterback is going to be huge. I think you pick up the phone if someone's willing to, you eat the contract, take a higher pick for Nick Foles. I know it's not, people are like, nobody wants Nick Foles. I don't think that's necessarily true. I don't think the Bears wanted to trade Nick Foles this year. Or he didn't want to go to certain places. So
he's got a no trade clause. You have to factor that in.
Yeah, he was saying no to certain places. But I'll be honest, I think there will be teams calling. And I think if it's the right opportunity, you got to pull the trigger if the parties agree. 100%. So yeah, they got to get more picks though. No question.
Agreed. I think that's it, guys, from a question standpoint. There's one more here about, what about a spread air raid scheme? Look, each scheme has its own merits. You just got to make sure that it fits your personnel.
As long as they have a scheme next year. They don't have one right now. I don't even know what it is. What even scheme are they running right now?
Well, that's been the question for a couple of years now.
Yeah, nobody knows. I'll take this one. Final take. Hester to the Hall of Fame. Devin Hester named a finalist for the Pro Football Hall of Fame this week. Just another feather in the cap of an illustrious Bears career that brought us so much just thrills beyond thrills. Those years with Devin Hester were fun. Could he catch worth a damn in the wide receiver slot? No, he couldn't. He was pretty pathetic in that situation, but that's not why he's going to the Hall of Fame. He's going to get in because he's the greatest at his position ever. He's the reason I have a picture of him behind me, and so many people do. This guy, 4-time All-Pro, or 4-time Pro Bowler, 3-time All-Pro, I may have that switched up, best returner at his position ever. I think that, and this goes for any position. I heard this debate on the radio this week. I wouldn't put the best long snapper of all time in the Hall of Fame. Why wouldn't you? Do you have any idea how important that position is? I absolutely would. I don't know how to judge a long snapper. I've never played the position, but I can judge a guy who changed football games and gave the Bears playoff opportunities and won them a lot of games by scoring touchdowns, and that was Devin Hester. No question he gets into the Hall of Fame. This will be the shortest final take that you've heard, and because it doesn't need to be long. Devin Hester will be in his first year. He's a finalist now. I'm not sure when we'll hear, but in the next couple of weeks, he'll be on that ballot. No question about it. You guys tend to agree?
Well said. Look, I mean, I've been pretty open about this for a while. I mean, if you are one of the game changers at your position, if you literally just impacted
who's done it since him? Anybody done that? Cordell Patterson's come close, but
Patterson
nothing
to
nearly.
extent. Jamal Agnew, but like who? Like it doesn't. Like, none of these names will strike fear, right? I mean, it's all about. There's never been anyone like Devin Hester since then, and because of the rule changes, there never will be. So you're never going to see that greatness again. I think, anytime you have someone who fundamentally changes the position so much, I think punters should get in because, some of them are true weapons. Kickers obviously should get in. Someone like Justin Tucker. I mean, how do you not put someone like Justin Tucker in the Hall of Fame?
Adam Vinatieri, are you going to hold him out? There's no way. He's going in. So
100%. 100%. So depending on position, all that stuff is. I mean, those are just.
It's not a hall of defense, and it's not a hall of defense and offense. It's the NFL, the Pro Football Hall of Fame. You count all.
You got to put them in.
You win and lose games on special teams. I don't know how many football people that I've been around in my life that head coaches at all three levels that I've covered or just known through friends of friends. You win and lose games on special teams. As cheesy and as coach speak as that sounds, it's an important aspect of the damn game. Yeah. Devin Hester was the best to do it. He's going to the Hall of Fame.
Well said. Right on.
Thanks, guys, for tuning in. Club Dub Podcast presented by SportsMockery.com. Guys, give us a follow on the corners here at Wells 15, Kevin at Drew Cole, at Eric Lambert there. Also, give our page a follow at ClubDub_podcast. Bears going for 3 in a row. They'll be up at US Bank Stadium in Minneapolis at noon on Sunday to take on Sean Mannion's Vikings, probably. Maybe Kirk gets back, but he's not vaccinated, so I know he's got to wait. I know the NFL changed the rules around to where it's 5 days after your symptoms are done, and Kirk was a good person. He did report his symptoms right away and things like that, so, it's not like, I know a lot of people want to use him as a punching bag, myself included, because I don't think he's very good. But he's had a good season, and if he doesn't play, the Bears are going to have a much better chance to win. We all watched Sean Mannion play, and, they got nothing to play for. So this should be a Bears win. I got the Bears 30-17.
Dang, 30 points.
Justin Fields going to have a good game. Yep.
So because Justin Fields is playing, I'm going to say Bears 16-12.
I hate you, man. You're such a buzzkill.
He relishes it, man. Don't let him fool you. He loves being the anti-troll.
I love being the anti-troll. No. Look.
I know.
Yeah. We're gonna talk about this in the offseason. Well, I am very, very interested in what happens this offseason. No, but I do think the Bears will win, and I hope Fields plays well.
Eric?
It really does depend on who plays for the Vikings at quarterback. If Cousins plays, I think the Vikings have a better chance to win. But if it is Mannion, I think the Bears are going to win and probably win by double digits because Mannion's horrible and apparently their rookie QB is worse.
I wish I had that soundbite. I didn't even think to put that in.
But, I think the Bears will probably put up about 24 points. Fields will have a couple touchdown passes, and I think they'll win by about 10.
Okay. Yeah, I honestly gotta find this now. I think the Bears win just because their defense has really picked up over the last couple of weeks. So
if it's Mannion, he's gonna have a really bad time.
Oh yeah, big time. And I was actually kind of hoping the Vikings would have beaten the Packers and the Vikings had something to play for this week, because if they did, this would be the third time in Matt Nagy's 4 years that he has knocked them out of the playoffs.
Which would have been so
amazing.
Sweet.
Just a great way to exit Chicago. Would have been awesome.
Yeah, no, you're right. And I think the Bears will be playing hard to end Nagy on a high note too. I just think that, we talked about that early on in the show, but yeah, I got the Bears in this one. I think they end 2020, 2021 with a win. A 3-game winning streak would be, nice silver lining, I guess, to whatever you want to cap off this year as. But you're right. I think they win, and I think they win by double digits. So
winning is better than losing.
John Madden said it best.
You think so?
Oh, John Madden was big on that sort of thing. It was a famous story from 1976. The Raiders had already wrapped up home field advantage. So when they went into the season finale against Cincinnati, the Steelers had knocked them out of the playoffs a couple of times the previous few years. And if they had lost to the Bengals, the Raiders had lost to the Bengals, the Steelers would have been knocked out of the playoffs. So they would have avoided them. Whereas if the Raiders beat them, the Steelers get in. And Madden wasn't having any of that. So he made sure his team was ready to play, because you never cheat the game of football. You play to win. And they absolutely tattooed the Bengals in that game. Pittsburgh gets in. They beat them in the AFC Championship, go on to win the Super Bowl that year. So it's a great story.
I think Vikings fans would be rooting for the Bears too, because they want a higher draft pick. Bears don't have a first-round pick. Doesn't even matter. So whatever. I think, all right, all three of us have the Bears. We'll reconvene next week and talk about it. Bears going for a 3-game win streak. Always nice to end the season. Hopefully on a winning streak. I don't think they'll have any problems this week, but we'll see. For Eric and Drew, I'm Kevin Wells on the Club Dub podcast presented by SportsMockery.com. Go give us a follow, like I said, and we will talk to you next week. See you guys.
Do you think you want to get a look at Mond next week?
Not particularly.
Mike, why don't you get a look at him?
I see him every day.